Hello students, Mr. John here with Chapter 7, Lesson 4, Part 1. That means I have broken this lesson into two separate lessons because I didn't want to shove all the information into just one. These lessons are so long. They're not this long in your next book, in American Nation. But regardless, we're going to drive on. So Lesson 4 is sort of the opposite of Lesson 3. In that Lesson 3 was sort of a little bit of culture and a whole lot of war. And Lesson 4 is a whole lot of culture and a little bit of war. However, I broke it up into the two lessons, so, well, we're going to start off with the Golden Age of Athens. We follow basically the story of the Athenian leader Pericles and talk about life in Athens in general. This is the culture part. This is today's lesson. And then Athens gets a little too big for her britches, starts bossing around other city-states. You end up having a war between Sparta and Athens and their allied city-states. It's called the Peloponnesian War. That will be the next lesson. That will be Lesson 4, Part 2. And you remember about Sparta. They throw babies off cliffs, so you don't really want to mess with them. But we'll see what happens in the Peloponnesian War. So today, really, life in ancient Athens and Pericles. Tomorrow, Peloponnesian War. Let's drive on. Alright, at the end of the Greco-Persian War, that's the war between Greece and Persia, Xerxes and whatnot, that's what they call it. At the end of the war, Athens found itself actually in pretty good shape, despite the fact that it was burned to the ground. Basically, they had got a lot of street cred for helping to win that war. Under the leadership of a leader named Pericles, Athens became the economic and cultural center of all Greece. I mean, we are learning about Athens and not, Miletus or Thebes. Athens' practice was called direct democracy. This essentially means that every citizen was a part of government. I mean, that's far from everyone. It was really landowning native Athenian males. But still, that's a ton of people. And they, all those men had a direct role in government. They were allowed to go to the legislative body. They met every 10 days and had a direct involvement in things like the making of laws, setting policy, making decisions on foreign policy and war, things like that. That's crazy. That's kind of like, imagine all the registered voters here in the United States. Instead of just going to vote, we actually went somewhere every 10 days and helped to do the actual legislation. It sounds pretty crazy. In fact, we don't do it here in the United States. We have what's called a representative democracy. Basically, we elect people, and then they represent us in government. They run the government. We just voted for them. They represent us. So, different process. Direct democracy worked in Athens because Athens was a lot smaller than the United States. The book says there were 43,000 Athenian citizens that were basically these landowning native males that could participate in government. But even of those 43,000, 6,000 participated in the meetings regularly. So that's, a fraction of that. I mean, it makes sense here in the United States where we have the representative democracy and we vote. Only like half of the registered, or half of the adults that are have the capability of voting are registered to vote. So that's like half the people, basically 50% participation rate among possible voters here. So I guess they had the same problems back then as they do now, people being involved in government. So this legislative body of Athens meets up every 10 days, and these citizens make the policies and laws and things. The top 10 members of this representative assembly are elected by their peers yearly, and one of them was named Pericles. Oh, these individuals are called generals, so they're sort of help run the legislative body as opposed to, say, a military. They're called the generals. One such general was named Pericles. He became pretty larger than life after the defeat of the Persians, and he wisely helped rule Athens for 30 whole years. Pericles worked to get more people involved in government. He had people in powerful positions based on merit, not station, so he might have a new project, and he put someone in charge who actually knew something about it as opposed to just some rich white guy or his son. As such, you had common people working alongside elites, and they were all working together for the good of Athens. So that's great, everybody working together. Pericles helped rebuild the city after the Persians burned it, and he supported the arts and philosophy. Athens became, as Pericles called it, the school of Greece. All right, let's hit up life in Athens. Athens hit its height in the 400s BC. It was the largest Greek city-state with a population near 285,000. That includes women, children, and slaves. The men were artisans, farmers, and merchants. They usually had their work done in the morning and would exercise in the gymnasium in the afternoon. And then at night they would gather and sip wine and talk politics with the other men, while the women stayed at home and worked on the house and raised kids and things like that. Maintained the home. Girls were often married in their young teens, and I bet most of you young ladies in this class aren't quite ready for marriage yet. Yeah, I understand. Good thing you're not Athenians. Must be nice to have all your work done in the morning. The low-income women would help with the work, like farming or maybe selling goods in the market. Upper-class women actually barely left the house, and often just maintained the household, raised children, and supervised the servants. They would only leave the house for funerals or festivals. Athenian women were seen as under Athenian men. They did not go to school or take part in politics. But a few women had a bit more freedom in Athens, particularly the foreign ones, such as Aspasia. Aspasia was a teacher and philosopher from Miletus, another Greek city-state, typo. She taught public speaking in Athens, and her ideas influenced other important Greeks like Plato and Pericles himself. At this point, I did a little more research on Aspasia, and fun story, there's some soap opera business with her, like the part how the book neglects to mention that she and Pericles had a son out of wedlock, and he left his first wife for her. The son's name was also Pericles. Yeah, I wonder why they left that out of the book. Someone's got to keep you kids in the loop. And make sure you don't get the sugar-coated version of history. True story. Link right here, YouTube video, all about Aspasia and that soap opera business. Alright, moving on. Now we've painted this picture of Athens as this beacon of democracy and freedom, but slavery was widely practiced. It is said most households had a slave, and it was totally normal, a part of the culture, even among the slaves themselves. Slavery was just a part of life in Greece. Some slaves had it harder than others. The hard laborers died young, like the miners, the ones forced to work in the mines, while slaves of artisans or craftspeople had it easier. Some slaves even taught the upper-class children. Slaves were typically captured in wars, and many were actually fellow Greeks from other city-states. Farming was a common occupation among Athenians. They grew grains, veggies, and fruits, including grapes and olives, for oil and wine to be traded. The Athenians could not actually grow enough food to support its own population, so they needed to trade things like olive oil and wine to get more grain. They built an impressive trading fleet, in fact the largest of all Greece. So that's actually where we're going to call it today. Your assignment is 3 questions, constructed response, so please complete them in full sentences. For today's assignment, please answer the following questions using complete sentences. What's the difference between direct democracy and representative democracy? Okay, we went over that. What do you think of as Pericles' most important contribution to Athens? That's an opinion, but you have to give me something that actually happened and not like, well, he built a super awesome Colosseum. That would be Rome. And who was Aspasia? And why was she treated differently as a woman in Athens? Alright, those are your questions. It's going to be 10 points. Check your spelling and grammar. That's it for today. Have a good one. Let me know if you need anything. Tomorrow, we pick up with the Peloponnesian War.